Caliph Rasan sat on a metal crate in the corner of the salvage bay and watched the human work on the collar around her throat with careful hands. She did not understand him. In her long years of captivity, she had learned much about the species of the galaxy, and humans were supposed to be weak and cowardly and concerned only with their own survival. They were small creatures who had joined the coalition only 30 years ago, who paid their taxes and followed the rules and never made trouble for anyone. They were prey animals pretending to be civilized. Or so her captors had always said, but this human, this Marcus Cole, did not act like prey. He had looked into her eyes without flinching when she held his life in her claws. And now he worked on her restraints with the steady hands of someone who was not afraid. This collar is connected to your nervous system, Marcus said as he studied the device with a small scanning tool. If I cut it wrong, it could kill you or cause permanent damage to your spine. Kellis nodded once. I know. The slavers told me many times what would happen if I tried to remove it myself. Then you understand why I need to be careful, Marcus said. And he went back to his work. Elith watched him for a long time in silence. And she found herself confused by the strange feelings in her chest. She had been a prisoner for 6 years, passed from owner to owner like an object, forced to fight in pits for the entertainment of wealthy beings who saw her as nothing more than an animal. She had killed many in those pits, and she had taken wounds that would have ended lesser creatures. And through it all, she had held on to one thing that kept her alive: hatred. But now she was free, or nearly free, and she did not know what to do with the hatred that had kept her going for so long. Why did you do it? She asked suddenly. Marcus did not look up from his work. Do what? Free me, Kellis said. You do not know me. You do not know my people. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and then he shrugged his small human shoulders. I saw the brands on your skin, he said. I saw the chains. I saw what they did to you. And I could not walk away. That is not an answer, Kellis said. That is sentiment. And sentiment does not survive in this galaxy. Marcus finally looked up at her, and there was something in his eyes that she did not recognize. Maybe that is why the galaxy is so broken, he said simply. And then he went back to his work. 3 hours later, the collar fell away from Kellis' throat with a soft click, and she reached up to touch her bare skin for the first time in years. She had forgotten what it felt like to be without that weight around her neck, without the constant threat of agony at the push of a button. Tears fell from her amber eyes before she could stop them, and she turned away so the human would not see her weakness. But Marcus did see, and he said nothing, and he gave her the dignity of pretending not to notice. The neural suppressor will be harder, he said after a moment. I need to do some research before I try to remove it. But I promise you I will find a way. Caliph wiped her eyes and turned back to face him. You make many promises to someone you just met. Human, my name is Marcus, he said with a small smile. And I keep my promises. Over the next several days, Caliph healed in the salvage bay while Marcus worked on understanding the neural suppressor and finding the right tools to remove. Ith brought her food, strange human rations that tasted bland but filled her stomach, and he brought her water and blankets and a place to sleep that was warm and dry. He asked her questions about herself, about her people, about where she came from, and Caliph found herself answering, even though she had sworn never to speak of such things to outsiders. The Valarith were a proud people, she told him one night, as they sat together in the dim light of the bay. We lived on a world called Valaris Prime, a planet of great forests and vast mountains where we hunted and raised our young in peace. What happened? Marcus asked. Lith's claws dug into the metal crate beneath her. The coalition happened. She told him everything. She told him how the coalition had come to Valaris Prime with offers of trade and alliance. and how the Valorith had welcomed them as friends. She told him how the Coalition had studied them, learned their strengths and weaknesses, and decided that the Valorith were too dangerous to be allowed to exist as a free people. She told him how the bombs had fallen without warning, how entire cities had been destroyed in a single night, how the survivors had scattered to hidden colonies across the galaxy while the Coalition hunted them like animals. They called it the Valorith Suppression Campaign, Calith said, and her voice was cold with old anger. They said we were apex threats, that we could not be trusted, that we had to be controlled or destroyed. Marcus listened with a face that grew darker with every word she spoke. How long has this been going on? He asked. 22 years, Calith said. For 22 years, my people have been hunted and enslaved and killed. And the galaxy has done nothing because the Coalition controls what information reaches the public. She looked at Marcus with eyes that held no hope. Your people are part of the Coalition, human. Your people pay taxes that fund the ships that hunt my kind. And you did not even know. Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. And Calith expected him to make excuses, to say that humans had no power in the Coalition, to distance himself from the crimes done in his species' name. But he did not. Instead, he asked a question that surprised her more than anything else he had done. How many of your people are still out there? Calith blinked. I do not know. We lost contact with most of the hidden colonies years ago. There could be thousands left, or there could be hundreds. Marcus nodded slowly, and Calith saw something burning in his eyes that she recognized from her own reflection. Anger, not fear, not pity. Not the helpless despair of someone who did not want to get involved. Just pure and simple anger at an injustice that could not be ignored. Then we need to find them, Marcus said. We need to find your people, and we need to tell the galaxy what the Coalition has done. Calith stared at him. You would do this? You would stand against the entire Coalition for a people you did not know existed until a few days ago? Marcus met her eyes without looking away. I would stand against anyone who puts living beings in cages, he said. I do not care how powerful they are. In that moment, Calith Versan, Huntress Commander of a dying people, felt something she had not felt in 6 long years. Hope. She reached out and placed her clawed hand over his small human fingers. And she spoke the words of her people that bound one warrior to another. I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid, she said. From this day until my last breath, your enemies are my enemies, and your battles are my battles. Marcus looked at her hand on his, and then he looked up at her face with that strange small smile. Then I guess we are in this together, he said. Calith nodded once. A gesture of respect from predator to prey that had somehow become something more. Together, she agreed, and in the dark corner of a forgotten salvage bay, an alliance was born that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. Marcus spent the next week digging through the corrupted data systems of the slaver ship, searching for any information that could help them understand the full scope of what the Coalition had done. What he found made him want to burn the entire galaxy to the ground. The files were damaged but not destroyed. And Marcus had spent 15 years learning how to pull data from broken systems. So piece by piece, he rebuilt the records of horror that the slavers had kept. There were manifests listing the Lareth prisoners by number instead of name, with notes about their health and their value and their compliance levels. There were communications with buyers across Coalition space, wealthy beings who paid fortunes for the chance to own a Valarth or to hunt one on private game preserves. There were reports from Coalition military vessels that coordinated the capture missions, official documents with official seals that proved the government knew exactly what was happening. And there were videos. Marcus watched one of them, and then he had to stop because his hands were shaking too badly to continue. Calith found him sitting on the floor of the salvage bay with his face in his hands. And she knew without asking what he had seen. You should not watch those, she said quietly. They will break something inside you that cannot be fixed. How can you stand it? Marcus asked without looking up. How can you know what they did and not want to tear it all down? Keleth sat beside him on the cold metal floor, her massive form making him look even smaller than he was. I do want to tear it all down, she said. Every day I wake up with rage burning in my chest like fire. But rage alone cannot save my people. Marcus finally lifted his head and looked at her. Then what can save them? I do not know, Keleth admitted. We are scattered and broken and hunted. We have no ships and no weapons and no allies. The Coalition has made sure that every species in the galaxy fears us too much to help. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Keleth could see thoughts moving behind his eyes like shadows in deep water. The Coalition controls the information, he said slowly. They tell everyone that the Valarath are monsters, that you had to be stopped, that the suppression campaign was necessary for the safety of civilized space. Yes, Keleth said. They have been telling those lies for more than 20 years. But what if we could tell the truth? Marcus said, and there was something new in his voice, something that sounded almost like hope. What if we could show the galaxy what really happened? Keleth shook her head. How? The Coalition controls all major communication networks. They would block any transmission we tried to send. Not all networks, Marcus said. And now he was standing up, moving toward his computer terminal with purpose in his steps. There are old relay stations from before the Coalition existed. Emergency broadcast systems that were built to survive any disaster. He pulled up a star map and began marking locations with quick fingers. I have been salvaging ships for 15 years, Keleth. I know things about the infrastructure of this galaxy that most people have forgotten. Keleth rose and walked to stand beside him, looking at the map with new interest. You think we could use these old systems to send a message? I think we could send a message that the Coalition cannot stop, Marcus said. But first, we need to get off this station, because it will not be long before someone comes looking for that slaver ship and whatever cargo it was carrying. He was right, and they both knew it. They began preparing to leave that night, gathering supplies and tools and loading them onto a small transport that Marcus had been rebuilding in his spare time, but they were not fast enough. The Coalition enforcers arrived at Coven Station 3 days later. A squad of 8 soldiers in black armor who went door to door asking questions about a missing cryopod. Marcus heard about them from a friend who worked in the docking bay, and he knew immediately that they had run out of time. We need to go now, he told Keleth. They will be here within the hour. But Keleth shook her head. If we run, they will follow. And your little transport cannot outrun a Coalition pursuit ship. Then what do we do? Marcus asked. Keleth smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found worthy prey. We do not run, she said. We fight. Marcus stared at her. There are 8 of them, Keleth. Trained soldiers with weapons and armor. Yes, Keleth said, and her smile grew wider. They probably think that will be enough. The enforcers came to the salvage bay exactly 47 minutes later, just as Keleth had predicted. Their leader was a tall insectoid being with 4 arms and compound eyes that gleamed in the dim light. And he walked into the bay like he owned it. Human, he said in a clicking voice. We are looking for stolen property, a cryopod containing a dangerous prisoner. Our records show that you received a salvage shipment that may have contained this item. Marcus stood in the center of the bay with his hands at his sides. I receive a lot of salvage shipments, he said calmly. I do not keep track of every piece of cargo that comes through here. The enforcer made a sound that might have been laughter. Do not play games with us, human. We know the pod was on that ship, and we know it is not there now. He gestured to his soldiers. Search the bay. Find the prisoner. And if the human resists, you have permission to use whatever force is necessary. The soldiers spread out, their weapons drawn. And Marcus watched them move with a strange calm that he did not fully understand. He should have been terrified. But instead he felt only a cold certainty that what happened next was going to change everything. "You should not have come here," he said quietly. The enforcer leader tilted his head. "Is that a threat, human? You are small and weak and alone. What could you possibly do to us?" "I am not alone," Marcus said, and then Keleth dropped from the ceiling. She had been hiding in the shadows above, her dark fur blending perfectly with the darkness. And she fell upon the soldiers like a storm of claws and fury. The first two died before they could even raise their weapons, their throats torn out by hands that moved faster than the eye could follow. The third managed to fire his weapon once before. Keleth's fist crushed his skull through his helmet. The fourth and fifth tried to run, but there was nowhere to go, and Keleth caught them before they reached the door. Marcus did not stand idle during the fight. He grabbed his plasma cutter and used it to disable the sixth soldier's weapon, then hit him across the face with enough force to knock him unconscious. The seventh soldier turned to face Marcus with panic in his eyes, and Marcus did not hesitate. He drove the plasma cutter into the gap between the soldier's helmet and chest plate and pulled the trigger. The enforcer leader was the last one standing, and he stared at Keleth with compound eyes that flickered with something that might have been fear. "Impossible," he said. "You were supposed to be broken. The neural suppressor should have—" "Your suppressor is in pieces on my floor," Marcus said from behind him, "and your soldiers are dead. And in about 10 minutes, every ship in this system is going to know what happened here." The enforcer turned to face Marcus. "The Coalition will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy for this. Let them try," Keleth said. And then her claws ended the conversation. Marcus looked at the bodies on his floor and felt something strange in his chest. Not horror, not regret, but a fierce satisfaction that surprised him. These beings had come to put Keleth back in chains, and they had failed. "We need to go," Keleth said. "More will come." Marcus nodded and grabbed his bag of supplies. "I know a place, coordinates I pulled from the slaver's data. A hidden moon where your people might still be gathering." Keleth's eyes widened. "You found a sanctuary location?" "Maybe," Marcus said. "I do not know if anyone is still there, but it is better than staying here." They ran for the transport ship, leaving the bodies of the enforcers behind them. And as they lifted off from Corvin Station, Marcus felt the weight of his old life falling away like chains. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was something new, something dangerous, something the Coalition had never expected. He was a human who had chosen a side. The journey to the hidden moon took 12 days through the darkest reaches of space, traveling routes that did not appear on any official star map. Marcus had found the coordinates buried in the slaver's encrypted files, a location marked only with a symbol that Keleth recognized as an old Belareth distress sign, a signal that meant safe harbor in her people's ancient language. "I have not seen that symbol since I was a child," Keleth said as she stared at the navigation display. "My mother used to draw it on my door to help me sleep." Marcus glanced at her but said nothing, because he had learned that sometimes Keleth needed silence more than words. The moon was called Vera's Cradle in the Old Tongue, named after a legendary Valarith warrior who had died protecting her people from an ancient enemy. It was a small world, barely visible against the backdrop of its giant parent planet, hidden in a part of space so remote that even the Coalition's long reach had not found it when they entered orbit. Marcus expected to be challenged immediately, but instead there was only silence all channels. "Are you sure this is the right place?" he asked as Keleth pointed to the surface below. "Look there." Near the northern pole, Marcus adjusted the sensors and saw what she was pointing at, a network of structures hidden beneath the ice. Barely visible, but definitely artificial. "They are here," Keleth said, and her voice trembled with emotions she could not name. "My people are here. The response came 5 minutes later. A voice speaking in a language that Marcus did not understand, but that made Keleth cry out in joy. She answered in the same language, speaking rapidly. And soon they were given landing coordinates for a hidden bay beneath the ice. The greeting party that met them was not friendly. 30 Valarith warriors surrounded the transport ship the moment it touched down. All of them armed with weapons that Marcus did not recognize. All of them pointing those weapons directly at him. "Step away from the human," the lead warrior commanded. A scarred male who stood even taller than Keleth. "He is with me," Keleth said, stepping between Marcus and the weapons. "He freed me from slavery and brought me here. He is not our enemy. He is human," the warrior said. "Humans are part of the coalition. Humans pay taxes that fund the ships that hunt our kind. He killed 8 coalition enforcers to protect me," Keleth said. "Does that sound like an enemy to you?" The warriors murmured among themselves, and Marcus could see uncertainty in their amber eyes. Finally, the lead warrior lowered his weapon. "The council will decide what to do with him. Until then, he will be watched." They were escorted through the underground complex, and Marcus tried not to stare at everything around him, even though he wanted to. The Valarith had built something remarkable here. Beneath the ice, a city of carved stone and flowing water, lit by bioluminescent plants that gave everything a soft blue glow. He saw families with children, elders teaching young ones, craftspeople working at their trades. And for the first time, he understood what the coalition was trying to destroy. Not monsters, not apex threats, just people trying to survive. The council chamber was a vast cavern at the heart of the complex, and Marcus found himself standing before 5 ancient Valarith who looked at him like he was an insect that had crawled onto their table. "You bring a human to our sanctuary," the eldest counselor said. A scarred male named Torvan Kel, whose eyes burned with cold fire. "Give me one reason why I should not kill him where he stands." Keleth stepped forward. "I will give you many reasons, honored elder." She told him everything, how Marcus had found her, how he had freed her from the cryopod, how he had removed her restraints and offered her shelter and protection. She told him about the enforcers and how Marcus had fought beside her. And she told them about the data he had recovered from the slaver ship. "He knows the truth about what the coalition has done," Keleth said, "and he wants to help us fight back." Torvan Kel leaned forward in his seat. "And why should we trust him? Humans have been part of the coalition for 30 years. And in all that time, not one of them has lifted a finger to help us." "Because they did not know," Marcus said. Speaking for the first time since entering the chamber, the council turned to look at him, and Marcus felt the weight of their ancient eyes pressing down on him like stones. But he did not look away. "I did not know what my government was doing," Marcus said. "I did not know about the suppression campaign or the slave camps or the hunts. The coalition hid all of it from the ordinary citizens who just wanted to live their lives. Ignorance is not innocence," Torvan Kel said. "No, it is not," Marcus agreed. "But now I know, and I am here. And I am offering you something that you have never had before." He pulled out his datapad and activated the holographic display, showing them schematics and technical readouts that made the counselors lean forward with interest. "I have spent 15 years taking apart coalition ships," Marcus said. "I know their technology better than their own engineers. I know their shield frequencies and their weapon systems and their communication protocols." He switched to another display, showing navigation routes and patrol schedules. "I know where their ships go and when they go there. I know the blind spots in their sensor networks. I know how to slip past their defenses without being detected." The council chamber was silent as Marcus laid out everything he had learned over his years as a salvage mechanic, turning a lifetime of quiet work into a weapon that could wound the mighty coalition. When he finished, Torvan Kel sat back in his seat and studied him with those ancient amber eyes. "Your people are not warriors," he said finally. Marcus shrugged. "No, We are not. Then what are you? Torvan Kell asked. Marcus thought about the question for a long moment before answering. We are survivors, he said. We come from a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. And for most of our history, we have fought against each other and against the world that made us. He looked around at the counselors, at Keleth, at the warriors who still watched him with suspicious eyes. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, he said. But we are stubborn, and when we decide that something is wrong, we do not stop fighting until we make it right. Torvan Kell made a sound that might have been a laugh. A deep rumbling noise like distant thunder. Pretty words, he said. But words do not win wars. No, Marcus agreed. But plans do. And I have a plan. He activated his datapad again and showed them a star map with a single location highlighted in red. This is Relay Station Theta 9, he said. It is the main communication hub for 3 coalition sectors. And if we take it, we can broadcast a message to every world in range. What kind of message? One of the other counselors asked. The truth, Marcus said. We show them what the coalition has done. We show them the slave camps and the hunts and the extermination orders. We let the galaxy see who their leaders really are. The council debated for hours, arguing about risks and rewards and whether this human could be trusted. And Marcus waited patiently because he understood that trust could not be rushed finally. As the blue light of the bioluminescent plants began to dim toward their artificial night cycle, Torvan Kell rose from his seat and walked toward Marcus. He was huge, even among his own people. And Marcus had to crane his neck to look up at his scarred face. If you betray us, Torvan Kell said quietly, I will hunt you across every world in the galaxy and make your death last for years. I understand, Marcus said, without flinching. Torvan Kell stared at him for a long moment. And then he did something that surprised everyone in the chamber. He clasped Marcus's forearm in the Valarth way, the gesture of respect between warriors. Then welcome to Var's cradle. Little human, he said, let us see if you can break things as well as you claim. Marcus smiled. Just point me at what needs breaking. And in the heart of the hidden sanctuary, the Valarith and their first human ally began to plan a war. The assault on Relay Station Theta 9 began at midnight, Coalition Standard Time, when the station's night crew was at its smallest and the defense systems were running on automatic. Marcus had spent 6 weeks studying the station's layout and security protocols, finding every weakness and blind spot in its defenses. And he had trained the Valarith strike team to exploit every single one. There were 46 warriors in the assault force, the best fighters that Vera's cradle could spare, and 1 human mechanic who had never fired a weapon in combat before this mission. Stay close to me, Keleth said as their stolen cargo ship approached the station's docking bay. If things go wrong, I will protect you. Marcus shook his head. If things go wrong, it will be because I made a mistake in my calculations. And in that case, I deserve whatever happens. Keleth made a sound that was almost a laugh. You have become very Valarith for a human. Is that a compliment? Marcus asked. Ask me again when we're done, Keleth said. The docking sequence went perfectly, just as Marcus had predicted. And the station's automated systems accepted their forged credentials without question. The first guards they encountered died before they could sound an alarm, their bodies hidden in maintenance closets by Valarith warriors who moved like shadows through the metal corridors. Marcus led them through the station's guts, through access tunnels and service passages that were not on any official map. Routes he had found buried in old construction records that the Coalition had forgotten existed. This way, he whispered, pointing toward a junction that would take them to the central broadcast hub. We have 9 minutes before the patrol cycle brings guards past this corridor. They moved fast and silent. 47 souls with a single purpose burning in their hearts. And Marcus felt something strange building in his chest with every step. It was not fear. Though he had plenty of reasons to be afraid, it was not anger. Though the rage at what the coalition had done still burned inside him, it was something else. Something he did not have a name for until Keleth placed her hand on his shoulder, and he saw the same fire reflected in her amber eyes. It was hope. They reached the broadcast hub with 4 minutes to spare. And Marcus immediately went to work on the main control console, while the Velarith warriors took defensive positions around the room. "How long do you need?" Keleth asked. 10 minutes to disable the security locks and prepare the broadcast, Marcus said without looking up from his work. "After that, we will have maybe 5 minutes before the coalition can shut us down. Then we will give you 10 minutes, Keleth said. And she turned to her warriors. "Hold this room. No matter what comes through those doors." The alarm started 3 minutes later. A shrieking wail that echoed through the entire station. And Marcus knew that their time of stealth was over. "They know we are here," he said. "Then let them come." Torvan Kell growled from his position near the main entrance. "We will teach them what it means to face the Velarith." The first wave of station security arrived 90 seconds later. A dozen guards in light armor who charged into the room expecting to find common criminals or desperate refugees. They found apex predators. The Velarith warriors met them with claws and fury. And the battle was over almost before it began. But Marcus knew that more would come, many more. "Keep working." Keleth shouted over the sound of gunfire and screaming, "We will hold them." Marcus's fingers flew across the console. Bypassing firewalls and encryption systems that would have stopped anyone who did not know the tricks he had learned in 15 years of salvage work. 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. "They are bringing heavy weapons," one of the warriors shouted from the doorway. Marcus heard the distinctive whine of a plasma cannon charging, and he knew that the thin walls of the broadcast hub would not survive a direct hit. "Almost there." He shouted back, 9 minutes. The security lock clicked open. And Marcus immediately began uploading the files he had prepared, video evidence of the slave camps, official documents authorizing the extermination of the Velarith, testimony from Keleth and other survivors. Everything they needed to show the galaxy the truth, broadcasting in 30 seconds. He called out, the plasma cannon fired, and the wall behind him exploded in a shower of molten metal and smoke. Marcus dove for cover but kept one hand on the console, refusing to let go even as debris rained down around him. 20 seconds. A coalition soldier broke through the Velarith line and raised his weapon toward Marcus. But Keleth was there before he could fire, her claws tearing through his armor like paper. "Stay down," she roared at Marcus. 10 seconds. The broadcast indicator turned green, and Marcus pulled himself up to the console one more time. "It is working," he shouted. "The signal is going out to every world in range." He grabbed the microphone and began to speak, his voice trembling but clear. "My name is Marcus Cole," he said. "I am a human, a mechanic, a citizen of Earth, and I am here to tell you the truth about the Galactic Coalition." He told them everything. His words carried across the stars to 1 billion receivers on 1,000 worlds. While behind him, the Velarith warriors held the line against an enemy that grew stronger by the minute. When he finished speaking, he handed the microphone to Keleth. She stood before the camera with blood on her fur and fire in her eyes. And when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 22 years of suffering. "I am Keleth Vasan, Huntress Commander of the Velarith people," she said. "For more than 2 decades, my kind has been hunted and enslaved and murdered by the government that claims to protect civilized space." She held up her arm to show the brand scars that still marked her skin. "This is what they do to us," she said. "This is what they have hidden from you. This is the truth that they hoped you would never learn." She leaned closer to the camera, and her amber eyes seemed to pierce through the screen to find every soul watching across the galaxy. "We are still here," she said. "We remember what was done to us." And we will never stop fighting until our people are free. The broadcast cut off as Coalition technicians finally managed to override the signal. But it did not matter. The message had been sent, and it could not be unsent. We need to go. Marcus shouted. The extraction point is 2 corridors north. They fought their way out of the station, leaving behind a trail of broken soldiers and burning wreckage. And Marcus found himself laughing despite the danger, because they had done it. They had actually done it. The stolen ship was waiting where they had left it. Engines running and hatch open, and the surviving warriors piled inside while Caliph and Torvan Kel covered their retreat. Is everyone aboard? Marcus called from the pilot's seat. Go. Caliph shouted as she leaped through the hatch. Go now. Marcus punched the engines to maximum, and the ship screamed away from the station, leaving Theta 9 burning behind them like a beacon in the darkness. The journey back to Vera's cradle was quiet. The warriors too exhausted and wounded to celebrate. But Marcus could feel something different in the air, something that felt like the first breath of spring after a long winter. Caliph sat beside him in the cockpit, watching the stars stream past the view screen. And neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, as they approached the familiar coordinates of the hidden moon, Caliph turned to look at him. You could have stayed ignorant, she said quietly. You could have walked away when you found me in that pod. You could have lived a safe and simple life and never known what your government was doing. Marcus stared at the approaching moon where the survivors of a dying people waited to hear if there was hope. Yeah, he said. I could have. He did not explain why he had chosen differently. And Caliph did not ask, because she already knew humans were strange creatures, small and soft and easily broken, but they carried something inside them that the Coalition had never understood and could never control. A stubborn refusal to look away from suffering. A reckless willingness to fight even when the odds were impossible. A strange and beautiful belief that one person could make a difference. Even against the might of an empire. The war was not over. It was only beginning. But for the first time in 22 years, the Valarith were not fighting alone and across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds where the broadcast had been seen, other beings were beginning to ask questions that the Coalition did not want answered on Earth. In the halls of government, a young diplomat named Elena Vance watched the recording of Marcus Cole standing beside the Valarith Huntress and made a decision that would change the course of human history on Corvin Station, where it had all begun. Mechanics and traders whispered the name of the human who had defied an empire, and on Vera's cradle, beneath the ice of a hidden moon, Caliph Versan stood beside Marcus Cole and looked out at the gathering crowd of her people who had come to welcome them home. What happens now? Marcus asked. Caliph took his hand in hers, her claws gentle against his small human fingers, and she smiled. Now we show them what happens when a mechanic and a predator decide to change the galaxy, she said. Marcus smiled back. I like the sound of that. Together, they walked into the light of the sanctuary, and behind them, the stars burned with the promise of a war that would set the galaxy ablaze. The Coalition had made a mistake. When they put Caliph in that cage, they had made a bigger mistake when they assumed that humans would never care enough to fight, and they had made